The transit hub of Viral Station never truly slept. Even during its designated quiet cycles, the massive ring hummed with life. Engines whispering through vacuum-sealed docks, holographic schedules flickering in 100 alien scripts, and countless beings moving with purpose or exhaustion through the artificial dawn. To Kethri, it all blurred together. She sat alone on a narrow bench near Gate 12, her long limbs folded tightly against herself, bioluminescent markings along her arms dimmed to the faintest glow. Among her species, light meant emotion. Bright colors meant joy, pride, or confidence. Hers were almost dark. Travelers passed her without slowing. Some glanced at her and quickly looked away. Others adjusted their course entirely, giving her bench a wide berth. It wasn't hatred, exactly. It was discomfort, pity mixed with unease. Kethri was a Veshlon, tall, slender, her skin a soft iridescent gray-blue, eyes large and faceted like polished glass. Once, her kind had been respected scholars and diplomats. Now, after the collapse of the Veshlon Concord and the accusations that followed, they were tolerated at best. She wrapped her fingers around the small travel satchel at her feet. Everything she owned fit inside it. I should not be here, she thought for the 100th time. Her assignment, if it could even be called that, was a one-way relocation to an outer colony, far from the core systems. Officially, it was resource redistribution. Unofficially, it was exile with better paperwork. The bench beside her remained empty. Kethri's bioluminescence flickered slightly, a reflexive response to the isolation. On Viral Station, no one sat next to a Veshlon unless there was no other choice. She lowered her head and focused on breathing, slow and measured, as her instructors had taught her long ago, back when she still believed she had a future. That was when the shadow fell across the floor. Heavy footsteps approached, unhurried and confident. Kethri's senses prickled. She did not look up immediately. Experience had taught her that attention often led to discomfort. Then the bench shifted. Weight settled beside her. Her eyes snapped open. The being who had chosen to sit next to her was unmistakably human. He was large, even by human standards, wearing a worn but well-maintained exploration jacket with faded insignia stitched into the shoulder. His boots were scuffed. A travel pack rested between his feet. His hair was dark, cropped short, and streaked faintly with gray. Most importantly, there were dozens of empty benches across the terminal. Kethri froze. Humans were unpredictable, individually friendly, often compassionate, but feared in groups for their stubbornness, resilience, and alarming tendency to insert themselves into situations that did not concern them. The man glanced at the departure board, then down at his wrist console, and finally turned his head slightly toward her. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked. The words were calm, casual, as if the answer mattered. Her throat tightened. "Why, you are already seated," she replied in careful Galactic common. He smiled, a small, crooked thing that softened his otherwise rugged features. "True. But I figured I'd ask anyway." She did not know how to respond. Several nearby travelers slowed, watching openly now. A pair of Soren merchants exchanged glances. A Jaxi courier's spines lifted in surprise. No one intervened. The human leaned back slightly, resting his arms on his knees. He did not crowd her space. He did not stare. He simply sat. After a moment, he spoke again. "You heading out on the colony run too?" Kethri hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. Outer Rim. K-73 cluster." "That's so." His eyebrows lifted. "Same ship, then." The Wayfarer's Grace. Her markings flickered faintly, surprise. You are traveling there by choice?" He chuckled softly. "Depends on how you define choice." Signed on as a systems engineer. Long-term contract. That made no sense. Humans rarely accepted long-term postings on marginal colonies, especially those populated by displaced or disgraced species. Why? She asked before she could stop herself. He turned to her fully now, studying her face, not with scrutiny, but with curiosity. Why not? She looked away. There is little opportunity, limited infrastructure, political complications. Sure, he said easily, but someone's gotta build the infrastructure. And complications are just puzzles with more pieces. Catherine stared at her hands. Most beings do not see it that way. That's their loss. Silence stretched between them, but it was not the heavy, suffocating silence she was used to. It felt neutral, almost comfortable. I'm Eli, the human said at last, extending a hand. She flinched slightly, then remembered herself. After a pause, she placed her slender fingers against his palm. His grip was warm, firm, but gentle. Catherine, she replied. Nice to meet you, Catherine. The departure chime echoed through the terminal. Passengers began lining up at the gate. Catherine stood, gathering her satchel. Eli rose as well, falling into step beside her without hesitation. As they joined the queue, she noticed something astonishing. Others were now avoiding him, not aggressively, not fearfully, but with the same cautious distance they had shown her moments earlier. Humans were respected, yes, but also known for aligning themselves with the wrong side if their moral compass pointed that way. By choosing to sit beside her, Eli had made a statement. She did not understand why it affected her so deeply. The Wayfarer's Grace was an older transport vessel, sturdy and utilitarian. No luxury, but well cared for. As passengers found their seats, Catherine hesitated at the entrance to the cabin. Her assigned seat was in the far corner, next to the bulkhead. Alone. Of course. She moved toward it automatically until Eli paused. Huh, he said, checking his console. Looks like we're seatmates. Her heart skipped. Why, you do not have to. Relax, he said with a grin. Assigned seating. Guess the universe wants us to keep chatting. She slid into the seat beside the window, pressing herself as small as possible. Eli took the aisle, giving her space. As the ship undocked, stars streaked past the viewport. Catherine watched them in silence, her thoughts swirling. Can I ask you something? Eli said quietly. She nodded. You seem surprised that I sat next to you. Her markings dimmed further. Most beings do not. Why? She swallowed. Because I am Veshlan. So, she hesitated, then forced herself to continue. We are blamed for the Concorde's failure, for treaties that collapsed, for wars we did not start, but could not prevent. Eli frowned. Politics. Yes. That's it, he asked. No personal vendetta? No ancient blood feud. She looked at him, confused. Is that not enough? He shook his head. Not for me. She studied his face, searching for mockery. Finding none, she felt something shift inside her chest. You are different, she said softly. He laughed. I get that a lot. Midway through the journey, turbulence rocked the ship. A warning light flashed, followed by an automated announcement. Attention passengers. We are experiencing a temporary power fluctuation. Please remain seated. The lights dimmed, then went out completely. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Catherine's bioluminescent markings flared instinctively, casting soft blue-green light around their seats. She immediately tried to suppress it. Hey, Eli said gently. That's actually pretty helpful. She froze. You are not disturbed? Disturbed? No. It's beautiful. Her glow brightened slightly, betraying her emotions. The ship lurched again. Somewhere ahead, a child cried out. Eli unbuckled his harness. "I'm going to check on that," he said. "You should remain seated," Catherine said automatically. He smiled over his shoulder. "Probably. But humans are bad at that." He moved down the aisle, his silhouette briefly illuminated by her light. Others watched him go, tension etched into alien faces. Catherine stayed behind, heart racing. Minutes passed. The lights flickered back on. The ship steadied. Eli returned, buckling himself in. "Loose cargo. Nothing serious. Kid's okay." Relief washed over her. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being you." He shrugged. "Someone's gotta." They talked for the rest of the journey. About Earth's oceans and Veshlan crystal forests. About engineering and linguistics. About loss, though neither used the word directly. By the time the Wayfarer's Grace entered orbit around the colony world, an amber and green sphere with wide oceans and scattered landmasses, Catherine felt something unfamiliar. Hope. The colony itself was rough. Prefabricated structures. Dust in the air. Unfinished transit lines. But there was movement. Purpose. As passengers disembarked, a small crowd gathered. Colonists, administrators, workers. Catherine stepped onto the platform and instinctively slowed, letting others pass. She felt small again. Then Eli stopped beside her. "Well," he said, slinging his pack over his shoulder. "Looks like this is home." "For you," she said. "I will likely be reassigned again." He looked at her sharply. "Why?" "I am temporary." He frowned, then turned toward a nearby administrator. "Excuse me." The administrator, a tall, insectoid being, approached cautiously. "Yes." "This Veshlan specialist," Eli said, gesturing to Catherine. "What's her assignment?" The administrator consulted a data pad. "Provisional support. No fixed role." "That's ridiculous," Eli said flatly. "You're setting up a multi-species colony without a cultural liaison or diplomatic analyst?" The administrator clicked its mandibles. "Resources are limited." "So is common sense, apparently," Eli replied. Catherine's glow flared in alarm. "Eli, please." He raised a hand gently. "Trust me." After several tense minutes, and more than a few sharp words, the administrator relented. "Fine," it said. "She will be assigned to the Colony Council as an advisor. Trial basis." Catherine stared, stunned. Eli turned to her, grinning. "See? Puzzle solved." She felt tears welling, an emotional response she had not experienced in years. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do this for me?" He softened. "Because you shouldn't have been alone in the first place." As the sun set over the colony, casting long shadows across the unfinished settlement, Catherine stood beside a human who had chosen to sit next to her when no one else would. And in that simple choice, everything had changed. She was no longer alone, and the galaxy, slowly but surely, would learn what happened when a human decided someone mattered. Months later, Catherine stood on the observation ridge overlooking the colony. It no longer looked like a temporary settlement clinging to survival. Solar arrays stretched across the plains. Transit rails hummed softly as cargo moved between districts. Towers of crystalline steel, designed jointly by Veshlan architects and human engineers, caught the light of the setting sun and scattered it across the valley like falling stars. Life had taken root. Behind her, voices carried on the wind. Laughter, argument, cooperation. Species that once avoided one another now worked side by side, not because treaties demanded it, but because survival, and something deeper, required it. Catherine's markings glowed brighter than they ever had in her life. She was no longer provisional. Her role in the colony council had become permanent after she mediated the water rights dispute that everyone else had declared unsolvable. Later came trade frameworks, cultural integration protocols, and something unheard of for a Veshlon in recent history, formal recognition of merit. History did not forget her species overnight, but it had begun to listen again. Footsteps approached, familiar and unhurried. "Thought I'd find you up here," Eli said, stopping beside her. She turned, smiling. "You're late." "Human tradition," he replied. "Arrived just in time to see what matters." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken as the colony lights came alive below. "You know," Eli said, back on Viral Station, "I didn't think much about sitting down next to you." Catherine glanced at him. "You changed my life with that choice." He shook his head gently. "No. I just refused to follow the crowd." She considered that, then reached out, resting her hand against his arm, a gesture that once would have terrified her. "Still," she said softly, "you reminded me that I existed." Eli smiled, warmth in his eyes. "You were never invisible. The galaxy just needed a nudge." Above them, a transport ship lifted off, carrying new arrivals, refugees, dreamers, builders, toward the growing world below. Catherine watched it disappear into the stars and felt no fear. Once, she had believed she would fade quietly into the edges of history. Instead, because one human chose to sit beside her when no one else would, she had found her voice, her purpose, and her place among the stars. And the galaxy would remember this colony not for its conflicts or its past, but for the moment loneliness ended, and something better began.